All right, getting ready to share my screen here, and hopefully you can hear me all right. This will be Rights and Policies for Human Trafficking Victims by Eric Bellner. That's me. This was done for the graduate level human trafficking course at Ohio State. I was able to take this course with Professor Hugh, PhD. And we'll be looking into how policy impacts social workers and their ability to work with human trafficking victims. So we will be spending a couple minutes here on each slide. We'll define the term human trafficking. We'll do a little critical analysis and talk about how as social workers, we can help and how other folk help us in our journey to help those victims that are suffering from some sort of human trafficking. Uh, so, in the Merriam-Webster dictionary, human trafficking is defined as a noun, which is organized criminal activity in which human beings are treated as possessions, controlled, exploited, as by being forced into sex work or involuntary labor. And that's Merriam-Webster Incorporated, 2026. Uh, as we can kind of see here, the image shown is kind of a way of, how do these victims fall into human trafficking? And we see that in conflict areas or when folks are trying to escape conflict areas, that there is a lot of opportunity to exploit these individuals and force them into labor. Historically, the United States has had policy put in place that establishes the United States as a sanctuary for individuals that are suffering from human trafficking. Um, and we'll be looking at how that policy has historically helped these individuals and where we stand now as far as helping human trafficking victims. Moving on to the next slide here, we see this is President George Bush and some of the legislators that were behind the Trafficking Victims Protection Act of 2000, which aimed to um, surround three ideas, which is the protection of victims, the prevention of harm, and the prosecution of those responsible. And they did so by calling for support and cooperation through directing government funding at certain things. Some of the funding, or some of those things that funding went towards, was you know, the time it goes into coming up with legislation and putting legislation in place. It also combated against human trafficking by adding assistance for trafficked individuals, which could be monetary help, training that was given to folks that are tasked with helping these individuals, task force or forces that work in ways that are to meant to help immigrants. Uh, these are entities that were meant to help. Um, and some of the funding and entities that we have seen historically are ICE, which is a task force of discussion today, um, and how policies have changed over the over past 2 decades. So, uh, speaking of ICE, in the top graph here we have where it says human trafficking. This is actually a graph taken from the ICE website. Uh, and talks about how in fiscal years 18, 19, and 20, what cases, indictments, and convictions looked like. The graphs at the bottom both show some of these statistics as they pertain to um, state and federal departments. Um, so we can take this data, kind of make a critical analysis. Um, that obviously something happened because in 2020 we see a huge drop off. The national average for convictions um, were 26% in 2018, and we're on the rise. In 2019, we saw 80% of prosecutions and convictions for those guilty or responsible of human trafficking or trafficking individuals of some capacity. Um, and then we also see ICE reported that their percentages of prosecutions went from 63% in 2018, 67% in 2019, and dropped to 34% in 2020. So we could say the reasonable doubt would, say, okay, well, the global, COVID-19 pandemic took place at 2020, and, maybe we could see some of the convictions uh, kind of reacting appropriately or accordingly to the kind of huge external stimulus or stimuli being the pandemic. But if we look at percentages, we actually notice that there's still comparable amount of uh, those that have been persecuted to years past. We look at both graphs and see similar numbers around the 2012, 2013, and even the 2014 um, percentages. And so you'd have to wonder why, if we were kind of on a steady, upcline in convicting these folks, maybe what happened. Um, and my research showed that in 2018, President Trump and his administration decided to cut dramatically the assistance that was being given to uh, task force task forces that were responsible for convicting people uh, that are guilty of human trafficking. And that being said, with the percentages kind of reflecting similar trends in years past, uh, if maybe the reason we see this dramatic decline here is a result of policy and how powerful policy and funding and how important those things are for social workers that are trying to combat these issues. Um, and so, uh, on a positive note, in 2018, there was also legislation that was passed, which is the Frederick Douglass Trafficking Victims Protection and um, Protection Act of 2018. Sorry, the Douglass Trafficking Victims Protection Act of 2018, which was an amendment or went further into the policy that George Bush and his administration had put in place. And this just takes the legislation a step further and says that it enhanced the government's ability to combat forced labor by including, uh, you know, prohibiting labor trafficking in diplomatic households, um, increased reporting requirements on goods produced, and mandated the establishment of a working group that focused on reduction as well. The only problem with the task groups that this was able to produce that their funding was cut as a result of President Trump's work. Um, but we can see that over half of the federal districts in this graph show that they were able to use this new legislation from 2018, and that in over half the districts in 2019, over half these districts were able to use um, this new policy that was put in place, regardless of the fact that funding may have been cut. Uh, it shows that, in the face of that, that we're still able to use policy for what it's intended to do, um, and that uh, these policies help give rights to victims and helps give law enforcement the ability to help, and it also helps the um, other professions be able to help, such as social workers. And this information comes from the Justice Department at justice.gov, where we're able to really kind of critically analyze some of this data that we're seeing and how complicated that policy, funding, and the like can kind of have on how we approach and how we help others. Um, so moving on here. That being said, social workers are able to help by uh, regardless of funding or not, that we're able to, as professionals, keep informed. And, I like to think that social workers and other professions are lifelong learners. And we can help by finding new ways or signs of how to notice human trafficking, and when we're able that we are able to help clients that may have been victims or been involved in human trafficking. Um, and in reviewing the code of ethics, we have a responsibility not only to ourselves as social workers, but to our clients, that we are, in a sense, social justice warriors. We are fighting for these folks to have equal treatment and rights uh, that we receive, and just trying to help them at best we can. And that it's critical when approaching this work that we do kind of also maybe lean back on our code of ethics, to make sure that any form of social justice that we're participating in, or any work with this vulnerable population, that we're doing so in an ethical way. Um, and we can help fight some of the injustices that these people are going through, not only by learning and by helping when we can from a social work standpoint, but we can also, as professionals, advocate and promote policies that we think are helpful and ethical. And we can do so by speaking to those that are in charge of making laws. We can speak out at local, state, and federal meetings. There are a lot of opportunities for professionals and social workers to make their voices heard, and continuing to doing so is a form of social justice that I think is uh, really important. And today, I think that it's really critical that we are fighting for our clients and making sure that they receive everything that they need. Um, and as I stated, that we're not working alone, we're working alongside other entities. And there are limitations to what social workers can do. And so this will require us working with police, uh, enforcement, lawmakers, lobbyists. There are a lot of people that we will um, not only cross paths with while we are promoting change and fighting for policy, there are also folks that we'll need to work with that our clients may also be working with as a result of some of the complexities that go into find rediscovering life after being trafficked and how we can help these victims obtain a more normal life or at least normalcy as far as it is considered theirs. And so we'll just look over here at the references um, that went into the information that came to you today. Again, my name's Eric Bellner. If you have any other questions about today's recording, you can email me at bellner.2. That's BELLNER dot two. And I would be more than welcome to share any more facts or information about human trafficking and ways that we can combat those responsible and ways that we can make sure that we're doing our best and how we can help others. Thank you for listening and have a great rest of your day.